In next week.
Suspense.
We'll tell you more next week.
Exactly. Well, it keeps you watching.
It does. It does. The time approaching 17 minutes past 7. Now, crumbling courts, a lack of defence lawyers and not enough legal advisors. Just some of the reasons why 66,000 court cases in England and Wales are stuck in limbo.
Yes, that's right. For victims of sexual abuse, the long wait for justice can be particularly difficult, of course, and there are fears that delays may be putting some people off from reporting it. Our reporter Josie Hannett has been looking at this situation in South East England.
It was 38 years ago. I was 10 years old and I was terrified. I froze on the spot.
Matt Hayward is talking about his experience of being abused as a child by a family friend. For years he kept it a secret, carried on life as normal, but when he finally decided to tell his story and report it to Kent Police, he didn't realise how long it might take before he got justice. The
delays that I faced in the court system for me were really, really challenging. There were two cases that were being run together. The process ended up taking so long to get to court. It was actually 7 years after I first reported the first offence. One of the perpetrators actually died. The courts were fantastic. The people that worked within the courts were absolutely fantastic. But I think it's just the huge pressure that they are under. And for me, for the last 7 years, and for my family, life's been on hold.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, good.
I'm good.
Matt was inspired by his best friend's daughter Poppy, who at 11 years old reported the abuse she faced at the hands of her paternal grandfather.
I'd hidden it for so long, the turmoil and hurt that it's caused me throughout the years, not saying anything. You know, the bravery of her coming forward and actually being able to talk about it and report it was inspirational, really. I'm a firefighter at heart. You know, that's probably perceived as quite a macho sort of thing to do, you know, and all big, strong, burly people doing it. That's not the truth. There's loads of different people in the fire service, but it just goes to show that this affects people right throughout society.
The latest figures from the Ministry of Justice show the backlog of cases is at a record high, with more than 66,000 cases in England and Wales incomplete last year. Maidstone Crown Court was the worst affected in the South East, with 1,600 cases for trial outstanding. Hove Trial Centre, made up of Lewis and Hove Crown Courts, had a backlog of more than 1,000 cases, and Canterbury more than 700.
It's a couple of decades of lack of investment in the courts estate, where we have crumbling buildings, in the personnel, where the courts are unable to recruit legal advisors at the moment, where defence lawyers are leaving in droves. All of these have added to the fact that there simply aren't the resources to deal with the amount of work that we have.
Poppy's grandfather was jailed for 13.5 years for abusing her. Living now in East Sussex, she's become an ambassador for Kent Charity Family Matters and the NSPCC. She campaigns for better support for victims of sexual abuse and improving wait times in the court system.
You haven't had that closure. Yes, OK, maybe you've spoken out, you've done this, but it's still so open-ended. And to have to put your life on hold, and mine was only 2 years, and I understand now it's way longer, it drives you crazy, like, to put it in the most realistic way. I think being my age now, I'd be like, I don't have the energy to sit with this and carry on through this. Like, I mean, I can imagine a lot of people think, well, I've kind of half dealt with it for most of my life. Why now should I dig it all up and then be left waiting? You're putting people's lives on hold because they've had the courage to make themselves vulnerable.
The Ministry of Justice says it's recruiting judges and maximising the use of remote hearings and Nightingale courts. But the temporary Nightingale court in Maidstone is due to close by the end of March. They say it's no longer needed. Meanwhile, Matt's abuser will be sentenced next month.
Yeah, you feeling all right now? Yeah.
Well, we're joined now by Stuart Nolan, who's a solicitor and who's chair of the Law Society Criminal Law Committee. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, Stuart.
For inviting me.
And we saw the impact that this is having, but let's go back to the beginning. What exactly is it that's behind this?
Well, we all know there's been a pandemic. The world stopped, so did the criminal courts. Jury trials couldn't take place. But at the background to that has been, I think, in my view, decades of underfunding of the public service, the criminal justice system.
Yeah, because there were delays before the pandemic came along anyway. So what was it? Was it sort of the infrastructure, the staffing?
It's a combination of factors. If you like, there's been a chronic problem going on for decades, underfunding, poor buildings, perhaps not enough people to do the job, cuts in the jobs, not enough judges. And then the pandemic came and made that acute. And attempts have been made to try and rectify that, but there simply haven't been enough courtrooms or enough judges given the time and the staff to support them to give justice to people who are waiting in the system, like your report made quite clear.
And it feels, therefore, that this isn't just about recruiting more judges, because if they've not got the courtrooms to sit in, it doesn't solve the problem, does it? No,
it doesn't. I mean, our court estate is described as crumbling. Poor roofing, sometimes the system doesn't work. I mean, a local court to me in Merseyside couldn't work on a Friday, electrical problems. These things didn't happen 20, 30 years ago when maintenance was in a different state. So, yes, but you need a court to sitting in order for the jury to hear the case, for the lawyers to attend, for the witness to attend, for defendants to be investigated, sure.
And the problem is sharper in some parts of the country than others, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, there are geographical differences. In the south of England, it's far more acute, in the Midlands. Some place in the southeast of England, the backlog's twice what it was in 2019.
And do we know why that is?
That's probably a very more complex problem. There may be more trials. There may be more complicated trials. I suspect it may be because there's less advocates and cuts in the prosecution service in order to, as well, do the work and administer it and try it in a court. Lack of court time, lack of judges. These things are probably more acute in the south than perhaps the north, northwest and other places in the Midlands.
We heard in that report as well about the human cost of all of this for people who are being forced to deal with the issue time and time again, and it gets dragged out, what is often a harrowing ordeal. But also a growing number of people who just drop out of the system altogether. I think, you know what, I can't get justice served here, I'm not going to even bother.
Yeah. Delaying justice is bad for everybody involved in the system. The victims, of course, they say, well, why bother? I'm giving up. I just can't take the stress anymore if you wait too long. Those people outside who may have the courage to come forward and say, look, this is what's happened to me. They may feel if there's no prospect of justice, why bother, really? And, of course, there's always those people who are falsely accused or wrongly accused. They too have to have justice in order that they're waiting for their justice isn't delayed in any way. So yes, it's got a very, very, very human cost to it all.
So what is the solution? I mean, because the MOJ, and we heard it in that report there, they said it's recruiting judges, maximising the use of remote hearings and Nightingale courts. They say the Nightingale court in Maidstone due to close at the end of March because they say it is no longer needed. I mean, are online hearings, remote hearings, the solution?
Not for jury trials, I don't think, no. I mean, a jury trial very much depends upon people being present. I mean, they've piloted some of these things, but it's still the way we do justice. And across the world, British justice was, or is, looked at as being something to be admired. And when we don't do justice here, it not only affects the people in our country, but it also people look into us and say, well, look, this justice system isn't working. So, I mean, the solution, I'm afraid, is resources. It needs more judges. It needs more and better court space. It needs to pay the advocates and to create a system whereby advocates feel there's a future in order to be part of the system. Everywhere you look in the criminal justice system, from the beginning to the end, the cuts have denigrated the system, and we all suffer, not just the victims and the defendants and the practitioners, but everybody. We deserve a better justice system.
Are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful. It's a government decision. Maybe a change in government, maybe that make a difference. But I worry when I hear about cuts in public spending, doctors, teachers, every aspect of it, social services, because we're part of that public system. So I don't see how we can be made an extra special case. But I think somebody needs to. It's important to us all.
Stuart, good to have you with us. Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you very much.
Nolan, Chair of the Law Society Criminal Law Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the time is 7:26. Helping out friends and family with a spot of decorating is one thing, but what about two of the Beatles? After becoming one of the defining artists of the swinging 60s, Dudley Edwards did just that.
Yeah, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, both invited him to live with them.